The impacts a narcissistic parent can have on a child. Because I interviewed adults, they all share the impacts that growing up with a toxic parent or narcissistic parent had on them in adulthood. The effect of this kind of parent, especially when they did not understand it, often lasted into adulthood. However, once they became educated about their parents' narcissism, sociopathy, passive-aggressive behavior, and other toxic patterns, many were able to heal and create full and satisfying lives. Some of the most common impacts they experienced included a childhood riddled with insecurity, confusion, a lack of safety, a sense of anxiety, fear, sadness, lack of confidence, and loss of their sense of self, punishment if they ever attempted to advocate for themselves, and the clear message that to advocate for themselves was unacceptable, a sense of survivalism. Children in these situations learned to do what they needed to do to please or appease their toxic parent. They also became masterful at jumping through hoops and addressing their unpleasable parents' needs, regardless of the toll it took on the child. Having to meet their own needs on the sly or in secrecy in order to protect themselves. Experiencing a range of physical symptoms was not uncommon for these children. It is stressful to grow up like this, and not surprisingly, several people reported having varied physical symptoms during childhood, including migraines and headaches, cold sores, chronic gastrointestinal issues, hives, and skin rashes. Chronically, having to appease the parent, but their parents would rarely appease them. Instead, they would more often criticize them. At one point, nearly every child believed he or she was the problem and kept trying to be better, so that his or her parent would be happy. Confusion about feelings of just wanting to leave the parent when they were old enough to move out, but a lack of confidence or a sense of guilt from abandoning the parent. The kinds of impact that trailed people into adulthood included psychiatric and psychological issues, low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, using drugs or alcohol to manage their feelings, suicidal thoughts, self-harming behaviors, the inability to value themselves or feel that they are worthy, that they are enough, choosing a narcissistic, toxic, or controlling partner, choosing partners who are invalidating, demeaning, critical, contemptuous, dehumanizing, or abusive. For many of them, this was a cycle that repeated for years and felt like a natural extension of the childhood pattern of providing narcissistic supply, silencing their own needs, and living under conditions of insecurity and inconsistency. Sadly, being with an abusive person at a primitive level felt like home. Difficulty accepting kindness or assistance from other people, having their own challenges with empathy and entitlement as adults, being overly empathic with other people as an adult, and being taken advantage of because of this, not feeling as though they had the right to boundaries with their parent or with anyone else in their lives, running themselves into the ground and trying to do too much for other people. After the fact, many of them recognized that this was a pattern that was a byproduct of feeling that they were loved only for doing, and that this was the only way they thought that someone would want to have them in their lives, losing out on professional opportunities because they did not feel confident enough to accept a promotion or other advancement, or struggling at work because of indecisiveness and self-deprecation, periods of grief. Several people reported feeling robbed of a childhood or a family once they realized what the patterns were. They recognized that they had fought for having a sense of family or childhood and kept throwing themselves back in because they so desperately wanted to have loving parents and a sense of family. The unstable foundation laid by a toxic and narcissistic parent can impact a child in numerous ways, as we've seen from the behaviors and experiences reported by those interviewed. In the following section, I will outline some of the most common patterns, their effect on the child, and how these patterns can play out into adulthood. Persistent neglect and/or negation. Narcissistic parents may be so caught up in their own lives and pursuits that they are unwilling or unable to make the sacrifice that all children require. It can impact the child in very real and practical ways. The parent does not prepare appropriate meals at meal times, does not show up on time or pick up the child from school or activities, or does not adhere to a bedtime or other routines. The subtle impacts are even more far reaching and often manifest as not listening to the child, interrupting the child, maintaining little interest or curiosity in the child, and criticizing, belittling, and humiliating the child. If the toxic parent is not interested in the child at any given moment, he or she does not notice the child. This is not to say that a busy parent will always get it wrong. Many people beautifully balance the demands of careers, other life stressors, and parenting. It's about being consistent, present, and mindful. This does not always manifest as physical or environmental neglect. The child may be well fed, clothed, housed, enrolled in school, and taken on vacation. It is more of an emotional neglect. There is little interest in the child's internal world, but the physical is managed well, and sometimes very well, leaving other people thinking that the child actually has a perfectly loving life. It's like having plenty of food, but still starving to death. Effect on the child. In cases where needs are not being met, obviously this can leave children not only physically at risk, but also without the consistent mirror of, as described earlier in chapter 5, or with an insecure attachment to the parent. These children may chronically attempt to curry the favor of their parent, but over time, if the neglect is persistent and pervasive enough, the children may simply lose interest and withdraw entirely. How does this play out into adulthood? Some people in this situation have become fully estranged from their family and parents.
If you keep watching this series and thinking, something here feels uncomfortably familiar, that is your discernment waking up. The next step is not another video. It is clarity. The Decision Audit Toxic Parent Edition can provide that clarity. This audit helps you decide whether to keep full contact, limit contact, or step back from a toxic parent, based on evidence, not guilt. You are not deciding how to treat them. You are deciding how much access they get to you. Download the Decision Audit Toxic Parent Edition today. Link in bio.